Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another program from the N-word Unearthing. I'm with Yasmin again today because today we are talking about Teen Mental Awareness Day. For some of you who've been following our Facebook and Instagrams, you will have seen that Yasmin has been putting together some sort of things on social media platforms. I don't know what to call them, Yasmin. I'm very sorry. Not my department. What are they called? What would you call them?
What, the multiple posts or just
Multiple posts? Oh, is that for Facebook or
posts? Been getting some reels out. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. Anyway, they look amazing. And today we're kind of looking at teenagers and some of the difficulties that they have. One of the first things that I think is really quite important that we should add is that, not that one, very sorry, already. Being a teenager is the hardest time of your life. And I know you've only recently left teenage years behind you. Yes. Is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know. Would you say it's a good thing?
Maybe come back to me. Give me a little bit more of a trial run and I'll come back to you and I'll tell you if it's better or worse.
Okay, well, here's a question. Would you go back to school?
That's a kind of hard question. Emotionally, no. Logistically, probably I should probably give it a go over again.
I have yet to meet any adults who want to return to school. They're more than happy to go back to education and learning, but not go back to school as a teenager. So I'm taking it that given that I've been nursing for nearly 30 years, that's probably an indication that nobody really wants to ever return to school as a teenager, which would kind of reiterate that it's a pretty tough time, isn't it? And we were kind of deliberating earlier about what we could think about for teenagers, because there is an awful lot happening, isn't there? When you become a teenager, there is an awful lot happening, not only in education, but around demands, relationships, puberty. There's just so much going on, isn't there? And so many transitions, even with just every academic year, but also, you know, onsets with puberty and onsets of relationships. So we thought, first of all, we might kind of think about exams, leaving secondary school, thinking about college. And you've put here driving tests, so presumably that's all part of it as well. So where do you want to start? I must add that we had a teenager, an early teenager, who very kindly contributed some statements as part of his homework, and we've included some of those statements because Yasmin could relate to them immediately, whereas I was kind of thinking a bit about, well, I felt as if it was in the dark ages a bit. So we've used some of the statements to kind of lead us. So we will come back to these. So being a teenager is the hardest time of your life. What would you like to tell me about exams and school?
Where to start? I mean, I personally didn't get along with school when I kind of got to secondary school. I think the thing is, college is very much targeted and advertised as the stage of your life when you're learning who you are and, you know, becoming the person you want to be. But I think it really kind of starts from year 7, really, because you're mixing with all these people, and there are people a lot older than you that have more of an influence on you. So it's kind of from day one that you're trying to figure out who you are as a person. And so because of that, it can seem quite hard to try and fit in. It's kind of like going against the grain, so to speak. Everyone else is moving towards one thing and you just kind of get a bit lost sometimes. And I think that can be quite pressuring, quite anxiety inducing, because you don't know if you're potentially making yourself more of a target to be picked on because you're too different, but you also kind of want to feel, well, I'm not the same as everybody else. I'm different. I have this about my personality or whatever. You know, you kind of want to feel a little bit like I'm better than everybody else. But, you know.
Yeah. What about the exams, because I remember feeling really stressed. It felt like for a lot of my time at school, because if you weren't preparing for an exam, you were either doing it or you were doing endless testing for the prep exams, for the full exams. It was relentless. And so in a constant state of stress.
Oh, absolutely. It starts pretty early, obviously in year 10. And after that, it's kind of like, there's still fun lessons, but it's not, oh, you're here to kind of learn things. It's, you've got to learn this because otherwise you're not going to know what's going on. And I know, I don't think I knew anybody in my entire year group who was like, oh yeah, I'm cool, I'm calm, I'm collected. You had people who could show that, and that's what they were showing teachers and stuff, but you could see them kind of going, oh my God. Because again, the way the education system kind of targets it towards you is this is going to determine your path in life. If you don't do well at it, you're just going to succumb to nothing. You're not going to be able to go further on and pursue a larger education. This is ride or die, essentially. And if you get left behind, sorry, you get left behind. And it can be quite stressful.
That's pressure in itself, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because if you don't feel academically able for whatever reason, you're already feeling a failure for not achieving that bit. But now you're going to be targeted as, well, you're going to fail anyway. Your life going forward is not going to work in a way that everybody else is going to. So what does that then feel like?
So pressurizing, because you just sit there and you've already got exam stress, and now you're sitting there thinking, what if I make a mistake and it messes up the rest of my life? And I remember telling you the other day in the news, the government are deciding whether to withhold student funding for universities if you haven't got your maths GCSE or your English GCSE. And that's going to be even more terrifying now. At least I didn't have that kind of under my arse going, oh, you're not going to be able to get to uni because you won't be able to afford it. That kind of wasn't my worry. College was my worry. But now it's like, no, you've got to think 3 steps ahead, not one. And that's scary. If I wanted to go back to education now, I don't even know where I'd start. So I feel really unfortunate for the people who are starting college, because they kind of don't know how the system works yet. And at least I had a kind of small taster, but it's quite insane.
Yeah. One of the things that crossed my mind as well was that I was acutely aware that not only was I being judged in school, but I was being judged by my home life. And I was very much being compared with my brother, who is a little bit younger. And it was very clear that I was already deemed a problem child. I was well behaved. I never opened my mouth. I rarely challenged. It just seemed that I was a problem child, not only for my parents and having conversations with teachers about my academic ability, because there frankly wasn't any, but also this real understanding from my parents of what the heck are we going to do with Lavinia? Because unlike my brother, who was preparing for a military career and, officer status and going off and doing that, just exactly what was my strengths. And my strengths at the time was that I was really good at looking after my younger siblings. So naturally, that seemed the easiest career. And it seemed I want to say kind of like anybody can do this kind of job, when in actual fact, I know considerably better now that not everybody can look after children. And actually, children are very precious, and whose hands would you put them in? But nevertheless, that feeling of I'm failing at school and now I'm failing with my family because they deem me as a problem, but they also deem me as, what the heck are we going to do with her? So that's now 2 pressure points, isn't it? So, I can't be the only one, can I? There are lots of young people out there feeling like I did of, okay, I have an awareness that my family think I'm failing and I'm going to be a problem. But likewise, my school reiterate, as my peers reiterate, everybody around me, I can see perfectly well that I'm not doing well. That's going to be a pressure, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what about secondary school then, because you've added that in and you obviously feel that that's quite a lot of pressure for a young person. So what do you want to tell us about that?
I think secondary school is different for a lot of people. But I think we kind of have a very common understanding of not being quite sure where we fit, so to speak. You know, and sometimes it can be very stressful. And I mean, I think unfortunately my relationship with secondary school is what made me struggle so much with my relationship with college. You know, I remember sometimes when I was preparing for my exams, I had a teacher who wasn't exactly my favorite person. And unfortunately, as an autistic person, these are the rules, I can't break them. And she repeatedly said, "Oh, I didn't know you were autistic. I didn't know you were dyslexic. It's not on your file," as if that's my fault. But I remember she demeaned me quite harshly because I didn't understand what I was doing for this project. She's going, "Oh, but it's going to make up 25% of your grade. You have to do it by yourself. You're not allowed to talk to anybody." And I'm sat there going, I'm going to start crying. I want to get up and leave this room, but obviously I'm like, no, I can't do that because I'm not a bad child. I'm not a problem child. I can't leave. I was uncomfortable. I wanted to go, you know, and I remember I had a teacher who told me I would never be able to sit A levels because I wasn't good enough for A levels. I would barely get past with BTECs, and I remember that. And so I
how
told them,
did you feel?
I was thinking, well, if I'm not going to be good at A levels, I'm how am I going to even get BTECs? You know, it's very stressful. And I mean, I don't know if it's nowadays, but when I was transitioning to college, it was very much A levels are what you want to do. BTECs are the cheap, bad ones that the stupid people do. BTECs are for the people who aren't very smart. And so I was like, so I'm not smart, I'm not clever. And it wasn't until I got to college and I had my professor come up to me and say, "Why on earth are you doing a BTEC? You should be doing an A level." And I sat there going, but I've been told I'm essentially too stupid. I wouldn't be able to pass. I can't do an A level. And he seemed really quite stunned that I'd been told that. And it was like, oh, so not everybody thinks I'm stupid. I'm not bad at this subject. I can actually do it. Wow.
Yeah. And I too felt very much that it was like, you know, what on earth can you do given that you are incredibly dense, incredibly stupid, and you just feel so wretched with yourself, not only with other people telling you yet again. It's a very challenging milestone to get over, isn't it? Because if people like teachers don't believe in you, you know, that not only impacts on our mental health, but it, you know, the self-esteem is completely crushed because adults are deemed to have the knowledge, the ways about things, and actually our young people are so sensitive because of so many comments and judgments made on them. It's a horrible time to be in, which is why I keep reiterating to our families that, you know, being a teenager is the hardest time of your life because there are so many things to think about and try and get your head around. And if your confidence is erased and your self-esteem is just annihilated, which it felt like for me, I don't know about you, but you know, to be told you're stupid or not getting it, or people pitying you because, you know, oh, you just don't know, do you? You just don't get it, do you? That really patronizing stance was really quite awful because there is nobody else but you to kind of go, well, it must be me then. It must be me. You know, I can hear, I can look, I can see that everybody else seems to be getting it, but I don't, and I don't know why. You know, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm clearly quite dense. But we're talking at it very much from our experiences as autistic people, whereas there are lots of teenagers out there who are not necessarily autistic, but nevertheless are experiencing a considerable amount of pressure. And the other thing I wanted to add was, I don't know if you remember ever having career fairs, but I remember being dragged in year 7 and 8. You know, I had to seriously think about my career, and I was like, oh, I'd like to join the police force. I'd like to be a detective, and then you get to the awful crunch, it's the last paragraph on the back of the paraphernalia they give out to you saying you need X, Y, Z in qualifications, and you're going, oh, well, that's it then. I'm never going to get those.
We had career fairs, a very bad one. It was kind of rushed and put together, but I remember going to see the career counselor, and everybody had to go. And it was supposed to be like half an hour appointment. I was in and out within 10 minutes. Not her fault. Absolutely not her fault. You and I had sat at home going, what kind of careers what would you need to go to college for? So I went in and I had my list. I said, this is the careers I'm looking at. This is what I need to do to get there. And she was kind of like, okay, do you need any help with that? And I was like, not really, I've done it myself. And she went, oh, okay, send the next person in then. And I was like, yeah, see you, bye. So I'd been stressing all day going, I've got to sit in this room with this strange woman who's going to try and tell me what I need to do. And then she literally, I think she said about 5 sentences to me, and she seemed a bit like, oh, well, I can't add anything to that. So she went, well, I really recommend looking at this website. And I went, oh, I've already looked at it. And she went, oh. And then kind of went, yeah, send the next student in. And I was like, yeah, don't worry. I'm used to it. Bye.
So you might have been one of the luckier ones, but I know that a lot of teenagers have complained to me over the years that they don't know what they want to do. And I absolutely support them in that validation, because you spend all of primary school going to school, learning, and you hit secondary school and you realize that you're on a wretched pathway. It's not fun anymore, because you are expected to go there and learn and paraphrase and learn, regurgitate, learn. It just is relentless. But more importantly, you become quite quickly aware that if you don't get good grades, you can't choose what you want to do. So you are having this online growing momentum pressure that you should know what you're looking to do, because it is quite early on when you're expected to think about what subjects are you going to choose? Where are you going with all of this? There's no real fun in saying, do what you do best to go forward, to still enjoy your learning and to add to your learning. It was just this relentless pressure of you should know what you're doing. And then you focus on getting those qualifications so that you can then go into your chosen career pathway and get on with it. And it was just like, these young teenagers are still learning about what they like and what they don't like, and haven't got a clue what they would like to do for a career. Why is there so much? Why do we put pressure on young people like that?
I don't know.
Doesn't make sense.
All I can say is I'm a young adult now, and I still don't know what I want to do. I've got my job and I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I do love my job. But sometimes I wake up and go, oh, I'd rather do this career. And then I'm like, if only it was as easy as, Barbie. She's got like 3,000 careers she's had in her lifetime. She could just change her costume and suddenly she's an astronaut or something. I can't do that. I've kind of got to wake up and go, oh, I want to do that. And then, the next day I'll be like, oh, no, I don't really. And it's like, oh, my God, I still don't know 100%. I can't cement myself down going, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think that's why it stresses me out and scares me, because every time you have a conversation with somebody about careers, it's always, what would you like to do for the rest of your life? And it's like, What do you mean the rest of my, and they make it sound so final. You are going to die doing this job. And it's like, I don't like how rigid that is. Like, I don't like the idea of suffering through a career that I don't like anymore for the rest of my life. That's very scary.
Yeah, I think as well, certainly from my grandparents' generation, the expectation was that you kind of knew by the time you were 16 what you were going to go into, to then go in and do it. And you did stay in that job for the rest of your life. And if it wasn't that job, it was certainly that career pathway. It was a very narrow furrow. Whereas we went through a stage, particularly when we've had economic crises, and we've had 2 of those in my lifetime, where people have realized that actually you don't have to stay in the same thing. You can actually change your career. And loads of people have gone back to university or to college to retrain in a completely different career pathway, because as we develop through life, we do change how we view things. But the interesting thing is that school make you believe that you have one window to do this. They will never say, you know, don't worry about it, because if you don't do it, you can always go back to it later in your life. There is only one window, and that window is now, whilst you're at school. And it's so competitive because everybody's expected to do the very best they can be. And then you've got universities demanding, you know, we want the best of the best. So if you want to go to Oxford and Cambridge, you are going to have a row of A's, whereas there's a lot of people who are not what they call kinesthetic learners. They are much more learning in the doing with their hands, and they do it day by day and build up their knowledge, then add a, you know, sort of like a top up of reading around their subjects. You know, that's how the BTECs came about. That's how we had, you know, the opportunity to do modules rather than exams, where you could do your projects as a, you know, portfolio. Yeah. But still, this expectation, this pressure is quite alarming on our young people. It almost feels like to me there is a very dramatic emphasis on young people. We're either going to kill you off or you're going to make it.
Yeah.
Which, why would you do that?
I feel like schools often show the trapeze, but they do not show the net that is under it. Because if you don't make that jump, you're thinking, oh my God, there's nothing there to catch me. But there is. And I mean,
yeah.
My first day at college, I was sat in my form room, you know, meeting all these new people. And I thought, school's been a bit of pressure on me. They're already trying to prepare me for a future. So imagine my absolute panic when I've got my form tutor saying, by the way, you already need to start thinking about your UCAS points. And I'm like, hold on a minute. I only just got here. What are you on about? You know, I haven't been in the building for more than 5 minutes. What are you on about? I need UCAS points. Calm down, you know? And they're just like, oh yeah, you need to start collecting your UCAS points for uni. And I'm sat going, I've literally just got here. I don't even know half these people's names, and you're wanting me to worry about points to get into university. Like, you know, it's very stressful. It's like, can we not just take things like, you know, slowly ease into it? If you'd mentioned it at the end of the day, the next week, I think I would have been fine. But within the first 5-10 minutes of meeting me, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got to decide my career today, right now. Oh my gosh, I've got to know what uni I want to go to. I've got to know what subject I want. You know,
so definitely more pressure then, even
so
when
much
in
pressure.
College. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's really hard. Well, let's transfer to something a little bit more helpful, a life skill, driving tests.
I've got plenty of experience. Absolutely buckets of experience for that. You know, 4 times, still not quite there, but it's okay. Next time, maybe.
If it's any consolation, I failed and passed on my second attempt. Second attempt. However, what I would stress to you is there's a big gap between you and I of learning to drive, and the exams were infinitely easier to pass when I sat them. Yeah. And, you know, I don't even believe people in the 1930s sat for driving tests. They just went and bought a vehicle and carried on driving it. Hence why Wind in the Willow and what is it, Toad of Toad Hall was just a, you know, an absolute wreck when he drove and everybody panicked. But I digress. Driving tests are an added pressure because there is so much more to just passing a test, in that it feels like people now don't expect to do a job just down the end of the road, you know, at the end of the street. You know, you now expect to travel to and from work. And of course, there are some hours that have changed to allow people to have flexible working patterns. So there is a real need for driving everywhere. People now live in the countryside, whereas, you know, predominantly they lived in towns, which is fine if you catch a bus, but not if you live in the countryside, and buses are not as good as they could be.
Certain bus service for mentioning there.
I just thought I'd get that in.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there is that pressure, isn't there, of trying to have another skill set to enable you to have a little bit more independence. But it's still a pressure, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I could go on to a job website now, and I could tell you, out of the thousands of jobs on there, maybe 3 don't require driving licenses.
Yeah.
And obviously, I had a look into an internship recently, which was supposed to be a local internship, and I was like, okay, I can get the bus. And then right at the bottom in fine print, they said, must have a full license so that you can drive all over North Wales. And I was like, it's supposed to be a local job. What are you on about driving all over North Wales? What's that about? You know? And I think the thing is as well, being able to drive is seen as independence, isn't it? You are not independent until you can drive and you can, you know, go, okay, nobody wants to come with me, but I really fancy having a midnight Tesco run because, you know, I can't sleep, whatever. I can't do that. I've got to wait for somebody to going into town. Did you need to come with me? It's like, you know,
Yeah.
and I think as well, it's the thing is, isn't it? It's you go to college, you learn to drive, you go to uni, you move on, you get your dream job, you buy a house, you get married, and it's all like very rigid. This is a milestone you need to pass. And I'm sat there going, oh my God, I still can't drive. And I've got all my friends who are going, oh yeah, I passed my test 3 years ago. What a memory. And I'm going, 3 years ago? Oh my God, I'm still sat here going, Mum, can you take me to Tesco's? I need to get some food. I'm a bit dependent on people.
What about the pressures, though, of other students driving? Because there are some students in secondary school, you know, year 10 and in year 11, who are already learning to drive or have passed their test. Do you feel that there was a pressure to kind of conform and think about learning to drive?
I thought, honestly, I was going to pass while I was 17. I thought, this is what I have to do. Everyone else is going to pass when they're 17. You know, you can start legally driving at 17, so therefore you must pass straight away. And obviously I'm sat here 20 with 21 looming going, still can't drive.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't really remember anyone at school in my last year learning to drive, but college, people would come in, and if they passed, you know, for the first maybe week, they'd have their car keys in their hands all the time going, oh, I've just written, oh, I need to catch something for my car. And it's like, okay, sure, you can drive. I still have to get the train. I still have to get the bus. Okay, cool. Or they go, do you want a lift? I can give you a lift. And it's like, no, it's fine. I'll just walk. Don't worry. You know.
So there is that expectation, isn't there, you know, of growing up, and part of growing up, part of being a grown up, isn't it, is that you have been to school, you've been to college, you can drive a car. You know, we haven't even touched on things like puberty or sexuality. I know we're going to move on to relationships, but my point being is that already we've found that there is a large percentage of our day where there is an awful lot of pressure for teenagers, and we haven't even, you know, scratched the surface, really, have we? But all of these, without doubt, have an impact on our mental health and well-being, which seems a little unfair given that it's an awful lot of pressure for teenagers who, let's face it, don't actually have the power to implement what they would like to do 100%, because they've either got the teacher saying, no, this is what you need to do, or they go home and you've got the parents saying, no, this is what you need to do. And yet somehow they're expected to make sense of everything that's going to affect their future with very little power, very little independent thinking. You know, there are lots of young people who are expected to conform to their parents' expectation of what careers they're going to go into. And that's really hard, especially when you hear about, you know, from my perspective as a clinician, I remember once working with a doctor who would go in and flush. Absolutely could not cope with working in a very stressful environment. But the whole reason why they'd gone into being a doctor is why? Because their parents were doctors. Their grandparents had been doctors. Their great grandparents had been doctors. Their siblings were doctors. And when they had voiced in early teenage years that they didn't want to be a doctor, that had not been acceptable. So there is, a lot of pressure, and it just feels like you don't really have a voice to kind of assert as well as you'd like. This is what I'd like to do. This is, or I don't know the answer. I don't know what I'd like to do for a career, or I'm not even sure if I know myself. So maybe this is a good point to kind of move on to the kind of next banner. Sorry, I'm going to need my glasses as ever. So we were thinking about moving on to relationships, and I love this one from our young teenager who said, I worry that people judge me more than I think, which is such a lovely statement. And I asked you about this earlier, and you immediately said, oh, I completely agree with that.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? Tell us more.
I mean, I always worry, oh God, like, even if it's how I look when I'm going out, I worry, oh God, people are going to look at me. They're going to think all these things. And then I managed to leave the house going, okay, no, they won't think that much. And then I'll catch myself in a window and go, oh no, actually they're going to think bucket loads of things. Or somebody looks at me and I'm going, oh my God, they're thinking, why is she so tall? Why is she dressed like that? Why is she buying that? What, and they're probably not. They're probably thinking, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? But them looking in my general direction makes me think, oh my God, they're thinking about me and how I'm doing everything wrong. It can be very overwhelming, especially when you don't know the person. Because, sometimes when you look at me, I go, what is it? Because I get a bit anxious about what's she thinking while she's looking at me. But when it's a stranger, they're going to go home and you're never going to know what they were thinking when they were looking at you. And it's scary sometimes. Especially when you don't know a person, so you don't know their body language. They might have just been away with the fairies, and they might have just had, unfortunately, a resting face that's not very positive, but you've misread it. And I think the thing is, we are getting better at, the whole self-love movement, body positivity, all that. But I've still grown up when I was younger and vulnerable in you have to look this way. You have to dress like this, you have to wear your hair like this, you have to do your makeup like this, whatever. So
this is pressure from other teenagers,
potential adults, because I remember the same RE teacher from last week's lesson. Would you rather do your makeup or play Xbox? And it was like, can I not do both? It was very, you've got to do makeup. And it's like, what if I don't fit in this role people are trying to put me in it? And if I don't fit, how do I break out of it? So for years during my teenage times, I didn't do makeup because I didn't think I could do it as well as everybody else did it. So there was just no point trying because, I can't do it as well as I can. So they're going to make fun of me for not being able to do it very well. And it's only now since the first lockdown, I was kind of like, you know what, it's a skill and I like doing it. Okay, I'm not great at it. I'm not going to be I'm not going to be another MUA or anything, but I enjoy it. And okay, sometimes I might go a little bit overboard with my experimenting, but it's something that makes me happy and I don't do it for other people. I remember saying to you the other day, I know a lot of girls my age still feel the pressure. I have to wear makeup to go out of the house. And I don't feel that pressure. I mean, it might be helpful for some people who see me outside of the house, because sometimes I feel like could be an extra on The Walking Dead or something, but I don't feel pressure if I've got to hide my face because I don't fit with society's standards of what I should look like or how I should act.
Yeah, and I was thinking about also families' expectations, and I said earlier that my family all saw me as a bit of a problem. They didn't know what to do with me. And because my parents started that kind of discussing, in front of my siblings, they too deemed me a bit of a problem. And you just feel very lost in all of it. And when you're worrying about not fitting in with school because you are a problem, and you're worrying about at home not fitting in, you then become more aware, do you not, as you become an older teenager, of other outside influences. For example, there are many teenagers who do date one another. There are many teenagers who go on social media platforms. They're on the TikToks, they're on the Snapchats, they're on sort of looking at YouTube, and all for a variety of different reasons. But surely those must be quite pressured in some way of conforming, that add, another load of pressure to already what we've talked about with school or college or exams, or, even driving tests. So how do we kind of consider how we can help teenagers with that? Because it is a really overwhelming at times, is it not? From your perspective, but also from a parental perspective, surely.
I still go online and I see these girls who go, oh, I'm all dressed down today just because they're wearing a tracksuit, but they're still all done up. And I'm thinking, but they look barefaced, they look natural. I'm sat there going, I don't look like that. I can't even look like that on one of my best days, And I'm old enough now to kind of go, everyone's different. But it's hard when you don't see somebody like yourself represented in media or on socials, because I've never found somebody who I go, that's like me,
Yeah.
There's nobody like that. They're either too overboard or they're just not enough, and I feel like maybe I'm not fitting in somewhere, clearly. And I think slowly but surely, I think you kind of manage to get yourself out that mindset, because you know what, fine, there's nobody like me. For example, I don't know anybody who posts videos on Facebook of them dancing with a chicken nugget, but I've done it. It's fine. Somebody else might want to do it now. I doubt it. But, if somebody else goes, oh, yeah, I relate to that. It's like, I think there needs to be kind of less, I don't want to say stigma because that sounds like really official about it, but anyone can go anywhere, do anything, and they don't have to change themselves to fit in with it. Because, people have negative good and bads about themselves. It's all about focusing on the good, but not ignoring the bad, Emphasize what is good about you, what you like about yourself, but you don't have to hide it just to please everybody else. Because at the end of the day, their opinions don't really matter. It might hurt when they say something to your face like, oh, that old lady who said to me, that's an interesting outfit choice. Kind of a bit hurt, because, like, no offense, you're 80. What's your opinion got to do with it? Nothing. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm like, well, I like what I'm wearing. I'm warm. I'm not, freezing myself off. So why does her opinion matter? And I think as a teenager, you hear people say things like that, and it can seem very kind of lecturing of, you need to be you, be you. Don't be apologetic about how you are, how you perceive yourself. And I think it can kind of seem like, again, like a parent kind of lecturing you, and you're like, yeah, all right, your information's kind of whatever. But I think the older you get, even though you're not maybe super confident, you do kind of start building that little confidence of, this is what I'm like, this is who I am as a person, and if people don't like it, they could jog on,
Yeah.
There's what, it's kind of a life lesson you have to learn.
But it must be quite difficult, because you can do that now, but you've kind of managed to right. So there's pressure there for you, having to conform, having to fit in. And I know that a lot of my young people that I have in my caseload now, they have a lot of support from their parents trying to provide that. But I also remember, being very misunderstood by my parents. And often the phrase that I would come up with is, you don't understand me. And, if I could count, but every time I've heard young people say that, my parents don't understand me. And yet these same parents are desperate to support their young people. And and really have very good observations of their young people. They do kind of get it. You know, their monitoring is quite surprisingly impressive. So I don't know what you think about that, because obviously, again, is it because of too much pressure? Is it because you're not able to articulate how bad, how stressful, how pressured it feels? What do we mean when we say you don't understand me?
To be fair, when I used to say it to you, I think it was because I couldn't get out what I was thinking, or I don't know if I thought, not that you're old, you don't understand what it's like now, right now, in this moment.
Yeah.
You don't understand. You might have your teenage experience, but that was not this time era. It was a different time, and so you can't, like, I can't put you in my body and go, this is what it's like now. Go to school for me for the day, and you come back and you tell me what it was like. You know, I can't do that, and sometimes it can be very hard to talk about what's going on. And I know sometimes you can feel, well, maybe I was making a big deal about it. You know, maybe I'm just really sensitive. I remember that being told a lot. If you ever kind of acted out of what people expected you to be, oh, you're oversensitive, you're being dramatic, you know, and it's like, it doesn't feel like I'm being dramatic. I feel like this is what's going on in my head. And when I talk about it, it can kind of be poo-pooed as no, this is just normal. You're just being a teenager, you know, whatever. And it's like, oh, well, clearly I shouldn't talk about it, you know. And again, I think
that must feel like pressure again, though, mustn't it?
Absolutely.
Because if you can't talk to anybody about it because you've been told that, you know, everybody experiences that, or it's perfectly normal, and you're like, well, I don't see anybody else doing it. So that comes back to where I was as a teenager. Well, it must be me then. It must be me. I must be the odd one out. But then there's no way you would go out of your way to say to everybody, hey, everybody, I'm the weird one. I'm the problem one.
Don't pick on me.
Yeah. You know, because that would only invite more people to openly judge you and put you down. And so I completely get, you know, where we say, I worry that people judge me more than I think, because we really don't want them to think anymore, do we? I mean, that's just quite worrying. But it's just more pressure, isn't it? More pressure. Okay, we were thinking about this one. I'm so grateful to our young teenager. This is quite a big one, and we were saying it doesn't matter whether you're autistic or not. Every teenager is going to be going through this, but worrying about my mental health massively, since mental health is a very inconsistent thing. It's beautifully put, because of course mental health isn't static. It doesn't stay the same way all day, every day. It is very much a fluctuating situation with new situations, new environments, old situations that we're very au fait with, but actually we may be thinking or feeling quite differently at that moment in that time frame. So what do you want to say about that one?
I mean, like I said to you earlier, I have depression, and, you know, if it was the same every day, I wouldn't be able to be diagnosed with something, because it would just be seen as my personality. So it's very natural. Some days I have really bad days, and other days, you know, I think, haven't got that anymore, I'm cured. And then the next day it's like, oh, maybe not so much, you know. And I think the thing is, people expect you to behave a certain way all the time. And it's like, but if I did that, that would be me as a person. And I know that's not me as a person. It's just an off day, or maybe I'm overwhelmed by something too much, and that's kind of led to me acting out of character, you know. And I think some people seem to think once you're diagnosed with something, you must behave like that all the time. And it's like, that's not how it works. It's kind of like go with the flow, but mental health wise, you know, you go with how you're feeling that day. And, you know, there's not much you can do to change it. You kind of just have to find your coping mechanisms to help you get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting one, because a lot of people, particularly say for example teachers at school, do not invest heavily in their training and understanding around mental health. Why would they? That's surely for a mental health nurse. But from my perspective, I have learned more through my clients than my entire training put together, which says something. You know, you have to do a lot of hours to kind of get that learning. But I also know that I spend a lot of time in breaking things down into small chunks that people understand and can then get to know themselves without feeling intimidated. Because, you know, let's face it, mental health still has a stigma attached to it, you know, and even for some people, autism is a stigma, you know, and I really hope that over time people will begin to realize that talking about mental health is a very proactive thing to be doing, really, in understanding yourself with you know, the highs and lows. It is inconsistent, but it's learning to surf the waves or to roller skate. You know, it's learning how to do the ups and downs without feeling completely propelled into an abyss of depression or a panic attack. You know, you want to kind of just keep it relatively consistently, that you feel you've got some control. But I guess with teenagers reacting to exams and homework and you know, expectations, that is so much pressure. It probably does feel like a complete roller coaster where you just don't know if you're going to sink or swim.
Yeah. I mean, I think as well, with this kind of still stigma around, as a teenager watching TV shows that are really groundbreaking and they're putting mental health or autism on the front line, you know, everyone's aware. I was watching a show on Netflix about an autistic child. Couldn't sit through an entire episode because it felt like that was his only personality trait. And it's like when I watch other TV shows where there's a character who has depression or anxiety, it's almost like that is their only personality trait. It's never delved into more. And while I appreciate being represented in media, which is fantastic, I'm not fully represented. It's very stereotypical representation. You know, for example, this autistic show, he only had one fixation, and I don't know any autistic person who only has one fixation. That is all they do. That is their only thing. And it's like, it's supposed to be his entire personality. It's, you can't just turn autism on and off, you know. Or you've got a depressed character and they're always wearing black and they're always like got a hood up, or they're sneaking in the corner and they're on their phone and they're not talking to anybody. And it's like, that's not what it looks like. That is not realistic whatsoever. And, you know, I find often those shows, the depression is the only storyline. And if the character's not a main storyline, they're suddenly just, you know, mute, more part of the furniture in the background. They've got no depth to them. And so you've got teenagers looking at that thinking, oh, well, that's what it looks like. That's what it represents. That doesn't fit me. That label doesn't fit me. And I know we're kind of trying to get away from labels, but I think sometimes labels do help. You know, some people who maybe don't get it need labels to slightly go, okay, that flag in my brain, I've got that. I know that person maybe might react to something differently, or they might need a different way of being handled, you know. So while labels might not be the best thing in the world, at least it can kind of help other people try to help you. And I think that's important.
Yeah. But it still comes back to, there is more pressure, doesn't it? Because you either fit what it looks or supposedly looks like, and if you're lost and struggling to find you, and, you know, again, teenagers desperately trying to define themselves as an individual, you know, their own persona, and it's very difficult when there's so much confliction around them and the expectations and demands from a lot of adults. You know, it is really difficult to find places where you feel you can be yourself, and feel comfortable with that. There seems very little opportunity, perhaps, you know, to, you know, this is okay, or yes, okay, we understand that you feel like this, but, you know, you won't feel like that all the time. you will feel that it is like a roller coaster, or it is like surfing the waves. You know, and that's okay. It's just learning what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, that you can work with that. But also trying to give young people a voice. And I don't know that that's, although we say we do that, I don't know that that's enough, because as we've already explored this morning, teenagers are under such a huge amount of pressure to conform to an expected way of being, as well as grow up, as well as gain qualifications for a career that they potentially might not even be aware of, you know, to do. And like you say, this expectation that, you know, there are certain milestones in your life that you will go on to achieve, you know, like going to college, like getting your driving test, like settling down into a relationship, having a family, you know, that's what we do, right? But what if you don't want to do any of that? What if you don't know what you want to do? Where is the space to kind of say, I'm not sure that I want to commit to that? Or what if I still don't know? You know, where is the freedom to feel that that's okay? And I'm not sure that anybody is allowed off the hamster wheel. You know, that's what you have to do. And actually, that's a pressure in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. I think those milestones aren't something that you're going to hit. They're things that you're expected you will hit. You will hit this milestone within this age range, within this time frame. And that is very pressurizing. And I mean, when I was at school, all I wanted was to be able to fit in. And it's very hard to fit in when the the whole kind of premise of fitting in is a lot like an obstacle from American Warrior. You know, you've got these tables that look flat, they look sturdy, you step on them and suddenly it's like, oh, it's changing, I'm going to go into this water if I don't quickly move and adapt. And I feel like teenagers are, while maybe it's not spoken about, are expected to be chameleons and be able to fit into any environment. And it's very hard when you're suddenly dropped into a new environment and you're expected to know what you're doing. And it's like, you know, Jeremy Clarkson, how do I turn this wheel? I don't know. You just have to know how to do it. But unfortunately, I don't know. I don't know how to do it. You know, I'm still sat here going, am I doing this adulting thing right? I'm not quite sure. You know, like I said, sometimes I wake up and I go, oh, 16-year-old me made a mistake. She should have continued going to college, even though it wasn't good for her. Her mental health was deteriorating drastically. And then the next day I wake up and go, you know what? I'm going to stay in my pajamas late today. I'm going to go and watch some F1 on the TV while I'm, you know, working away from my laptop. And I realized, you know what? I've got a very good life. I really like it. You know, it fluctuates. And I think the thing is, you're kind of expected, you are going to have a 9 to 5 in the office, or you are going to have a very academic workplace. And it's like, that's not what fits everybody, especially nowadays with the pandemic and, like, you know, online working and stuff. And I think we are expected to fit in this stereotype of what work is, and that's not what it is anymore. But our seniors, our adults, are not changing with the times, so to speak, saying, it's okay, you want to start up your own small jewelry business because of lockdown? Why not? You know?
Yeah.
It's not that anymore. It's, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to uni, you're going to get a high paying job, then you'll have children, then, you know, it's all then this. It's not enjoy what you're doing now. And I think that's what's so stressful about it. You know, you constantly have to think 5 steps ahead, and it can be very tiring.
Very tiring. I've put up this statement. I worry about doing something stupid that ruins my life. Again, courtesy of our young teenager. But it is interesting because I've had a couple of young lads say to me that because they're not able to make decisions, because they don't know what they want to do for a career, and because they've not been able to attend school, they are absolutely petrified that they are going to do something stupid that will impact so badly. It will have the poorest of outcomes for the rest of their life. It will impact for the rest of their life. And that's a real concern, because it's that pressure again, isn't it? It's just, you know, I've got to not make mistakes. And, you know, the beauty about making mistakes is that we learn better from those than we do in any other way. But again, we don't We don't encourage mistakes in school because you have to get it right. You have to go to school. You have to do the exams. You have to do well because then you can go to college. You have to go and do your A levels because then you can go to university. You have to get a degree so that you can then get a good job. There's so much pressure. Is it any wonder that it impacts our mental health as teenagers and leaves a lot of us feeling exhausted and distressed? That pressure just seems never ending, doesn't it?
Yeah. I do have to say, though, the only thing I hate about this statement is the fact that the language feels so bad to me, because I don't like it when people say that my decision that I made, because it was the right decision at the time for me, and I hate it when people, especially outside of my personal bubble, who don't know what was going on at the time, go, did you do something stupid? Did you do something silly? Like, I don't like that. It was not silly. It was not stupid, when at the time I was, crying in bed, and I would wait for you to go to work, and I was going, look, I'm going to get dressed so she thinks I'm going, but I'm not going to college. I don't like it there. It's not a good environment. And I hate it when it's mainly older people or people in the care community who constantly use this language of stupid and silly. And it's not stupid or silly when you're in this situation thinking, this is the only way I can get out. And you're looking at everybody else and they're all going, you've made a dumb decision. And it's like, but is it? Again, some days I do wake up and go, oh, what a mistake I've made. I've thrown away my entire life. And then the next day I'm like, last night I had pancakes for dinner because I can. That's not a bad decision. I might regret it later, but it's not a bad decision. I think
that's an interesting viewpoint, because I was thinking, when you were at school or college, again, it's the adults, isn't it, inferring that you may make stupid mistakes, when you and I have both learned in our lifetime that in that moment, that was maybe the only decision we were able to make. And, others may view it as stupid, but then we hoover up that expression believing it to be stupid. And that's really sad, isn't it? Because actually that wasn't our thinking, was it? It was an outsider's, like you say.
I think, when somebody says in a classroom, there are no silly questions, and then you ask a question and you just see on their face going, what an idiot. Yes, that's clearly a stupid question. And it's like, but how was I supposed to know that? You said there was no stupid question, so then I asked something and suddenly it's like, oh God, I've said the wrong thing. I have done something stupid. And it's like, I don't like feeling that I've done something stupid when all I was doing was trying to ask or trying to understand, So at the start of the year, I was like, I'm not going to use these words when referring to myself, because I know that if I let other people use that kind of negative words around me, it's just going to seep in, and all I'm going to see is negative. It's very hard to kind of say to people, you've just got to be positive. You've got to be positive, because it is hard to be positive every day. But I think when you kind of remove yourself from other people's judgment, the negativity that they kind of try to project onto you can kind of bounce off a bit better, because you're like, okay, you might think I've done something stupid, but if you were in my shoes and you had my options, what would you have done? Would you have wanted somebody to come along and go, that decision that you were umming and ahhing over for hours because you were stressed about all the outcomes, that was the wrong one, by the way, trick question. Game over, you are the weakest link, goodbye.
We've just had some feedback from 2 of our people, lovely viewers. So I was told in year 7 I wouldn't get any GCSEs, 11 GCSEs, 3 A levels, and a 2-1 from Leicester Uni in psychology. That's such a nice feeling, isn't it? And then I was told I'd get none either, got a 7 and went to uni and got an English teaching degree. You see? In your own time and pace, without your own pressure, with other pressures, you do achieve. Just very quickly, I just kind of wanted to look at the very last statement that a young person has. We've only got, less than a minute, but this is an interesting one. I worry about my personality completely changing. Any thoughts on that one?
You are going to change as you grow. There's not much you can do about it. I think just changing your personality slowly, naturally, organically. Because if you try and change it to fit in with other people, somewhere along the road, you're going to look back and go, who was that person? That was not me. You kind of have like an out-of-body experience. Like I said to you earlier, I was 14, 15, and I wanted the full emo hair. I wanted the big, like, you know, the eyeliner, the makeup, the black lipstick. I wanted all of it. And you were there going, absolutely not. That's insane. And at the time I was like, ugh, she's just being a horrible parent. Oh my God, she doesn't understand me. She doesn't know what it's like. I want to do this. It's my own body. I can do what I want. And I'm looking at it going, oh, thank God I didn't do that. You know, I still look back at some pictures and go, oh, that was a bit of a, you know, risque moment for me. I wish I hadn't done that, but that's hindsight. But that was one big thing that I was like, and I was so sure at the time, this is my personality, this is who I am. But now I look back at it and go, that wasn't me. That was me trying to please the outside environment I was in.
Yeah.
And I wasn't confident to be myself and go, oh, okay, no, I want to do this. So I didn't like it at the time, but I am very thankful that you kind of went, absolutely not. You're not going to do that. That, you know, no. So I managed to get away with, okay, you can have a long fringe and you can dye your hair black. That's as far as you're going. You know, and I look at that now and still go, oh my God, what was she thinking? But, you know, I wish I hadn't tried to force myself so much to be somebody else. Because even though my personality was maybe still a bit weird or strange at the time, there were other people like that. So I thought, okay, I'd rather be picked on when there's 4 or 5 of us than being picked on for being myself. And to be fair, it's very hard when you're in that situation and you're like, I've got to fit in, I've got to, because you're not going to fit in. But, you know, what's the saying? Someday you will find your tribe, you will find them, you will find this community that you fit into. And I might not have found it 100% yet, but I know that when I do find them, I'm not going to be apologetic for who I am, and they will accept me for who I am. I'm not going to, you know, it's not going to be a Trojan horse situation of this is what I look like on the outside, but on the inside, I'm this completely different person. You know, I should be happy, first and foremost, myself to be who I am.
So maybe that's the thing, because I know that when I work with clients, a very common phrase is that I'm actually allowed to think about myself. I'm allowed to indulge in myself. So my therapy is always about indulging and learning about you, but also be true to yourself, because that way, if you recognize that an awful lot of pressure has come from the outside influences, once you start listening to what you would like to do, and even if you're not 100% sure what you'd like to do, at least by listening to your well-being about, you know, this is me and I'm happy with who I am, that would give us the best chance going forward. And I remember one of the nurses, when I was training to be a nursery nurse, we went out for my birthday and I was so low and miserable, but this nurse had a real savvy about her. And we were talking about suicide. And she said, you do realize that your life is not to please your parents. You do realize it's about looking after you, because you've got to live with you all your life. And actually, your job is not to please them, but to please yourself, to go forward with what you've got to live with. And that's really hard for parents who are desperately trying to bring up a young person. But at some point, there is that understanding that they've got to relinquish that level of control. But again, it's about that pressure on the young person and helping them understand that, you know, really, the only thing you really, really need to worry about is listening to what you would like to do, what interests you, what do you feel comfortable with, and how can you make those changes become more of a permanent reality for you that allows you to feel good about yourself, that allows you to strengthen your strengths, and that allows you to learn more about yourself so you feel more empowered. And that's really a major headache, a major challenge for all our young teenagers, isn't it? I mean, where is their voice in all of that?
All I would say is self-love, self-care, and self-expression is not selfish. You are doing it for you. You are not doing it for anybody else. And sometimes it can be very hard thinking everyone's going to be angry at me. I mean, I had that thought the other day. I was like, everyone's going to be angry at me if I make the wrong choice for a career. You know, I can't tie myself down because what if I do it wrong, or if I'm not good at it, or everyone hates how I'm doing it, you know? But at the end of the day, it doesn't affect them, not really, you know. Are you going to lie awake at night thinking, oh my God, I've got to go to work tomorrow. Oh my God, I've got to go to college doing this thing that I don't want to do. You know, I understand having parents who maybe want to help advise you, but it's kind of like a royal court. You are the king, you are the queen, and you have your advisors. They are not there to dictate this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it and the time frame you need to do it. So yeah, self-love, self-care, self-expression. If you want to go and cut your hair and dye it a wacky color, at the end of the day, the consequences are yours. And if you decide you don't like it, guess what? You can go and dye it back. It's fine. Your hair will grow back. You know, you change your wardrobe. It's fine. You know, but you're not doing it for anybody else. You're doing it for you. And I think that message can sometimes come across as quite, I don't know. I don't want to say hippie, like, you know, oh, self-love. Oh, you know, I put myself first, believe in yourself, all that. And I don't mean it like that. I mean, I am aware that, you know, not everyone's going to be happy all the time. But if you don't try and you allow other people's opinion to dictate how you're going to live your life, you're never going to be happy.
Yeah.
The whole point is life. You need to try to be happy. It's not going to be 24/7. It's not going to be all the days of the year. You know, some days you might go, oh, I'm not very good today. But the happy times should make up for it. And they should be the thing that keeps you going, thinking, well, I'm going to have another happy day. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be next week. Might not be next month. But, you know, it will come. Yeah. And, you know, when it gets here, you'll think, oh, thank God I waited for that, because that was the best day I've had in ages, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So being true to ourselves then, and kind of acknowledging the difficulties, the challenges, but trying to find those opportunities to talk about them from your perspective is always helpful, isn't it? We've got to finish. We've got loads, I know, that we could talk about, but we can always revisit them. Thank you so much, Yasmin, for your huge contribution. Sadly, we won't have an Unearthing next week, and the reason being is because I'm having to interview, and Yasmin's not going to be doing any Unearthing on her own. So we're interviewing next week, but we will be back the following week. So I look forward to seeing our lovely viewers in 2 weeks, Wednesdays at 12:15. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye for now.